some baits just have that special it factor. Whether it's attracting us to the bait so we have confidence to use it, or it's attracting the bass to the bait so they eat it. One of those baits that definitely has the it factor is the Megabass Spark Shad. In my opinion, the Megabass Spark Shad is the most versatile, small paddle tail swim bait on the market. It's responsible for me personally for catching more double-digit fish than any other bait in the shop, so I am super in love with it. Today, we are going to break down the 3 sizes, the colors, and the best riggings for this bait so that you guys can catch more fish. If you're ready, let's go. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle. The Hookup Tackle is the world's largest showcase of Megabass products, featuring baits and colors not found at any other dealer. The Hookup also offers a wide display of OSP, Evergreen, Depths, Lucky Craft, Jackal, and many more. The Hookup Tackle is owned and operated by family, is staffed by guides and verified tackle nerds who love helping anglers elevate their craft. If you're in the Phoenix area, we'd love to have you stop by our showroom and check out the wonderful world of Megabass and the Hookup for yourself. If you shop online, there are almost 10,000 SKUs of Megabass products alone, with hundreds of other companies and new products being added daily. So next time you're looking for that hard to find bait, that color your fish have never seen before, or maybe you just want to elevate your game, look at thehookuptackle.com. What's up, guys? Welcome back. Ben Kohler, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being filmed by my buddy Jeff. Jeffrey the King on Instagram, of course. We'd love you to follow us on our company's page, the Hookup Tackle USA. Today, we are breaking down one of my favorite baits. This is the Megabass Spark Shad. Now, I know you guys are probably familiar with the Megabass Spark Shad, so hopefully today I can shed some light on how we fish it and maybe some riggings that you're not familiar with. If you're not familiar with the Megabass Spark Shad, shame on you. This is going to be a great episode for you because, in my opinion, this is really one of the most versatile soft plastic swim baits on the market. It's available in 3 different sizes. So you've got a 5-inch size for that full-grown shad. You've got a 4-inch size, which is kind of a good, blend intermediate, and it goes all the way down to a 3-inch size, which has become basically a staple in almost every smallmouth angler's arsenal. So today we're going to break down each size. Why don't we start with the small size? You think that's right, Jeff?
I like that.
We'll start small and work up. So 3-inch Spark Shad. Well, actually, let me back up.
Okay.
Before we get to the small size, let's take a big one out and just look at the bait a little bit so we can talk about what makes a Spark Shad a Spark Shad. So, first of all, a Spark Shad is a soft plastic, highly salted bait. It has great flavor to it. It has a beautiful natural profile. It looks the same in each size, whether it's 5-inch, 4-inch, or 3-inch, but a couple of things about the Spark Shad that make it special. You'll notice it has these stabilizer fins. What these stabilizer fins do is, as the bait falls, it prevents the bait from diving nose down. It keeps it horizontal, so as it falls in a horizontal motion. So if you're going to fish this thing weightless, it has this beautiful, almost Senko type fall to it. Okay, it also has a belly slot for weedless rigging. And then you'll notice anytime you kind of want to test the swim or the tail kick of a swim bait, if you just kind of let it kind of flop, you can kind of tell how big of a motion or tight of a motion the bait's going to have. This Spark Shad has a very tight swim motion. So very similar to like the Mag Draft, it's not a big, huge, wide tail kick like a K-Tech or something like that might be. It's just a very natural, tight motion, tight movement as it swims through the water. So it just looks lifelike. And there's something about this bait that the fish just love. It's been on the market now for several years. They continue to just eat it, unlike any other swim bait that I see through the arsenal. Because of the action, because it's a little bit tighter, I find that the Spark Shad works best in the cooler months. So for me, it's a bait that I like to throw basically from fall through like late spring. And then once the water temp really starts getting high, that's usually when I'll switch over to something that's got a wider movement, faster movement, something like a Skinny Dipper, a K-Tech, something like that. But for that 8-9 months of the year, the Spark Shad will outperform all those other swim baits, for me, exponentially. All right, so let's look at the little guy here. So the 3-inch Spark Shad. So again, as I mentioned, this is definitely a staple for a lot of smallmouth anglers. It's a bait that we throw a lot out here for all species, largemouth, smallmouth, white bass stripers. It's basically just a great bait to imitate a small profile bait fish. Now let's talk about some riggings, and I'll show you guys a couple secrets that Hippie will probably be mad that I'm letting out of the bag. The standard way of rigging the Spark Shad would be like this. I think this is the way that most anglers know the 3-inch Spark Shad, and this is on the back of an Okashira screw head. Now the Okashira screw head is a very unique jig head offering from Megabass. It is a swimbait head that has an asymmetrical prop blade on it. And what that asymmetrical blade does is it clacks and creates noise. It also creates a draft and a different motion through the water. So it's really kind of pulling the fish into the blade. It's kind of like crack, really, to a smallmouth. You get this thing around fish, they smoke it. So this is option number 1. It looks great in the water. Fish come to it, fish eat it. So this is like the no-brainer that we should all kind of have in our arsenal. Another way that I love to fish this thing is on the back of a little swim jig or an underspin. Now, this is the Megabass Uoze swim jig. This is the 3/16 ounce size, and it is made perfectly for the 3-inch Spark Shad. It's a very small, compact swim jig. The skirt material will just give it a little bit more bulk, but it keeps the presence very, very small, very subtle, right? The other thing that I love to do is I love to modify this Uoze swim jig into just a straight underspin. And this is actually how I throw this bait probably 90% of the time now. And what that would look like is if you take this same Uoze swim jig and you just take a pair of pliers of hemostats and you undo the wire skirt and you just twist the weed guard out, you get literally the most perfect underspin ever for the Spark Shad. It has the dual bait keeper on it. It's got the perfect shape. It was designed for this bait. You could use any underspin that you guys like. I just love the way the Uoze swims through the water. I love the way it looks under the water. And this is just a nice, natural way of presenting it. It's just nice and subtle. It cuts through the water beautifully, and it looks great as it's swimming. So you can push it up and over. If you want to, you can leave it like that. I usually just leave it like this, just so that I have just a nice, natural look. And there you go. Another way, and this is where Hippie's gonna get mad at me here. If you get the Scuppernong color. So Scuppernong is basically like a brown color. You'll see that name floating around a lot in Japanese plastics. This is a Japan only color. So it's kind of just a nice brownish root beer kind of color. It makes the most ridiculous compact football jig trailer there is. So if you guys like throwing a small compact jig, something like a K-Tech or a Depths headlock, something like that, the little Scuppernong Spark Shad on the back gives you just a totally different action than what everybody else is throwing. Everybody else is going to be throwing a craw, a twin tail, you know, something that looks more crawfish-like. You put the little Scuppernong 3-inch Spark Shad on there, and it just totally changes the action. Again, almost like smallmouth crack if you get this around a fish, so definitely consider adding that to the arsenal. All right, moving up in size, the 4-inch Spark Shad. Now this is the middle size. This is kind of the in-between, obviously the 5 and the 3. This is a size that I use a ton, but it's much more specific for my personal use. I find the 5-inch to be kind of the no-brainer. You could do a ton of different shit with it. I find the 3-inch to obviously be the finesse approach. So the 4 is basically my gap filler, right? So I really only use it a few different ways, but they're really cool ways, and I think you guys will like it. So the first way I rig it, again, is on the back of the Uoze swim jig. So, and again, this is going to look very natural. They make the colors to match the bait. So for instance, this is a Wakasagi Uoze swim jig with a Wakasagi trailer, so it fits perfect. Now, if you're gonna throw the 3-inch, you want to stay in the 3/16 ounce Uoze. If you throw the 4-inch, you can get away with a 1/4 ounce, a 3/8 ounce, or a 1/2 ounce. Any of those sizes will have the same size hook, and they're designed for that 4-inch. And you can mix and match these perfectly. So like baby bass for me goes with golden shiner, great because it has that gold blade, it looks great. You know, real, which is a color that I use a lot, looks great on smoke shad, right? Neon pepper looks great on gill because it kind of ties in that blue head with the blue bait. So you can really fine tune this. And then again, I will customize that Uoze to build a underspin. Now on the 4-inch, this is mainly how I throw this guy. This is kind of my probe the depths underspin size. So again, I can use a 1/4 ounce, a 3/8, or a 1/2, so there's lots of versatility, so I can get it in different depth ranges. It fits perfectly on there, and it just makes a beautiful underspin. That blade is spinning in the perfect spot underneath that bait, so it just looks great in the water and the fish chomping. So this is how I usually fish it. The other way that I fish it a lot is on an A-rig. So we haven't spoken a whole lot about Alabama rigs or spreader rigs or A-rigs, but it's one of my favorite techniques. It's a technique that I do all the time, and the 4-inch size is critical for me on an A-rig. So what I usually do, so here in Arizona we can only use 2 hooks, right? So typically they would go on the bottom and then we'd have 3 teasers. I know a lot of you guys live in places where you could use 3 or 4 or 5 or unlimited amounts of hooks. So on an A-rig, what I typically start with is 5-inch Spark Shads on my hooks, and then I use the 4-inch as my teasers. And I almost always mix and match colors. I never want 5 of the same color on here. I want to use something to just make a flash, make a trigger, have the fish just think really quickly. So this is a great chance for us to experiment and mix and match, you know, albino with Uoze, or baby bass and IU, or you know, mix in even some chartreuses and see what kind of combination triggers. So on an A-rig, the 4-inch is amazing. The other way we fish it quite a bit this time of the year is on this guy. And this is the bottom plus head from Megabass. And this is basically a heavy jig chatterbait type head. And it fits the 4-inch Spark Shad perfectly. So it comes in a 20 gram and a 30 gram. So basically like a 3/4 ounce and then a 1 ounce. And it has this really thin, tight blade that's going to vibrate, but this guy can sink down to the bottom. You notice the hook can be rigged on the bottom or the top. I usually keep it like this, rigged on the top, so that this guy can get to the bottom and just kind of bump along the bottom. I can fish it like a jig and give those fish a different look that they don't see very often. So if you guys are fishing open water where there's not a lot of wood to snag that treble on the back, this is great over rock, great through grass, the bottom slash plus head from Megabass. Okay, and then to the biggest size in the Spark Shad, this is the 5-inch Spark Shad. And this is definitely the size that I personally throw the most. I find this size to just be so versatile. It lets me fish so many different ways in a power fishing way, right? So I'm gonna break down the way that I usually do this, and it's kind of a 1, 2, 3 punch for me on the 5-inch. So again, getting back to the idea of this, because I can't emphasize the build of this bait enough. These stabilizing fins and the way this bait is built allow this to shimmy and fall horizontally, right? That no other soft plastic paddle tail like this will do. If I was to rig a Kitech or something else like this, they're basically on the pause, they're going to just fall straight down. What I can do with this guy is I can put the 5-inch on a 6/0 weighted beast hook. So that guy right there, and it could be weighted or unweighted. I like the weighted because it just helps keel it a little bit. So if I do want to work it a little faster, it keeps it going straight. I can put it on this hook and it's going to have that beautiful, just small little tail kick while that head is shimmying. But I could fish this in open water and then get it right next to a tree and then kill it. And then instead of the bait just spiraling down, I kill it next to a tree and it sinks just like a Senko would, but with a shad tail. So anytime they're feeding on bait, but they're kind of isolating themselves around brush, you know, wood, stumps, docks, you know, specific isolated targets, I can really pick it apart with this. So in the fall, when the bait's moving shallow, this thing is just so stupidly deadly. In the spring, when the bait is starting to move up and getting ready for that shad spawn, again, just deadly. So I could literally just cover so much water with this thing, pick it apart, tree by tree by tree, bush by bush by bush, and they just smoke it. So this is rigging number one, and probably the way I fish it, I would say probably 60–70% of the time is just like this. Now, if I want to keep the bait down a little bit deeper, I can go up to an 8/0 flashy swimmer. So again, this is the Weighted Beast flashy swimmer by owner in an 8/0. You could also get away with a 7/0, you know, if you guys like Trocar or something else, but I really like the way the 8/0 works on this guy. Now, what this will do is, because of the blade, this will, of course, give it a little bit of flash under the water, but really what it does is it churns enough water and grips enough water that it prevents the bait from rising in the column. So with the non-bladed one, no matter how deep I let this sink, right? So let's say I throw this out and I let it sink to 20 feet of water. The second I start turning my handle, this bait is swimming up towards the top. So this is really a shallow water presentation, very specific like what we discussed. But let's say I want to throw it across a point, let it sink down, and have it stay down there. Just simply by changing my hook style and going to this bladed hook, this will prevent the bait from rising up and will keep it down in a deeper zone. So I can target those fish that are hanging in some deeper trees the same way that these shallow fish are, just in a deeper zone. So this 1-2 punch lets me cover basically from the surface down to about, you know, 10–15 foot effectively. Now, the other way that I love to fish the Spark Shad is on the body balance head. So Megabass has designed this body balance head. You can see it's got this lead that kind of comes back off the back of it. They've designed this to perfectly fit the 5-inch Spark Shad. And the head is designed to allow the bait to continue to have a horizontal fall. It doesn't disrupt the natural action of the bait. It's not going to pull it down by the nose. So I'll use this rigging here anytime the fish are suspended. And this is one of the most deadly suspended bass techniques that I have found in the last 20 years. If they're on bluff walls, if they're on cliffs, if they're just kind of out, you know, schooled but suspended somewhere where normal techniques either get too far down or stay too high, this is a great one because I can pitch it out and then I can literally just engage my reel and just let it pendulum. And as it pendulums, it's swimming while it's falling right through the school, and it looks just like a bait fish falling from the sky, and they eat it. Okay, so this is a great one. The heads are available in a 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce. I use the 1/2 ounce 90% of the time because I want that thing to get down to the suspended fish. But there are other ways to fish this head as well. So if you want to just bang it around rocks, if you want to kind of bounce it over things, then you can use the 3/8 for shallower cover as well. All right, guys, let's dive into rods, reels, and line so you can understand exactly how we are fishing these things. So the 3-inch Spark Shad, this is the one that really is going to need the most dedicated gear. So historically, for that little Okashira head, we would throw it on the Destroyer Flissa. Now we have switched over to the P5 baby plugin. That works great. It loads well. The Whippet is also another brilliant one. It's just a little bit short. So if you guys are fishing from shore or ponds, the Whippet's great. The baby plugin is better from the boat. Since I fish it mostly on that underspin weighs 3/16 of an ounce. This is the combo that I use 99% of the time when it's on the underspin. It also works great for the 4-inch size on the underspin if we're throwing that 1/4 or 3/8 size. It's rated up to 5/8 of an ounce. So this is just a very versatile one for just kind of all-around use on the smaller Spark Shads. When we get to the bigger Spark Shads, this is where I scientifically break this down because this is a bait that I throw a lot. Now, I know a lot of you probably aren't going to have 3 or 4 different rod and reel combos specifically for this bait. You're probably just going to put it on one combo, but I'm going to show you what I use so that you can see what you have in your arsenal and something hopefully will click. So, getting back to the 5-incher, when it is rigged weedless on that beast hook, okay? So whether it's just the weighted beast hook or the flashy swimmer, it always goes on my Loomis Conquest 905C. This is my absolute favorite rod for throwing, you know, that 1 to 2 ounce swim bait that is rigged weedless. It's got a 3/4 to 3 ounce lure rating, so it's a great one. What I love about this is that it's 7'6", so I can make a really long cast with this, which is important out here. You know, we're fishing a lot of big water, clean, clear water, so we have to make a really long cast. It's got tons of power, and it's just a beautiful rod when it's under load, which is what the swim bait will do for us. So the 905 Conquest, no brainer. I pair it up with a Daiwa Zillion HD. This is my go-to reel for this type of fishing. And I like this reel because it's got the heavy-duty gears. So, you know, by the time you throw a 5-inch Spark Shad with the 8/0 flashy swimmer, you know, the bait's over an ounce, right? So it's a lot of stress to put on a normal reel. So with the heavy duty gears, it can handle it. It's got the big grips, it's got plenty of line capacity. So I usually stay in the 7-to-1 gear ratio so that I'm not going too fast with it. But sometimes I will bump to the 8-to-1 if it's really shallow water where I'm, you know, fishing it by a tree and then just killing it and letting it kind of horizontally fall. Because a lot of times those fish will eat it and start swimming to me. So the 8-to-1 allows me to pick up a little more line and get better hook sets on them. If I am fishing the Spark Shad on the body balance head and I'm fishing it for suspended fish, then I switch it to either the 894 or 895 NRX. I like the 895 the best. I'll go to the 894 if I downsize and have to put like the 4-inch Spark Shad on that body balance. But the body balance for me on the 895 is great. And the main reason that I switch to the NRX over the Conquest is the NRX is still king of the slack line sensitivity. So since I am throwing that bait out and literally just engaging the reel and letting it pendulum down, a lot of times the bite is literally just a, like, it's so light and I can barely even feel it on this rod, which is the most sensitive rod out there, that it doesn't transmit properly through to the Conquest, because the Conquest needs to be under constant load to really be sensitive. This guy doesn't. So for all that pendulum style fishing, I love the NRX. And then finally, if I'm really fishing tight, like let's say I've got to skip it under trees, skip it under docks, and a lot of you guys fish around docks, and the Spark Shad makes a great skipping swim bait, then I will go back to my Megabass TS Destroyer Poker. And this is a 7.2, very versatile rod. Again, it's got a 1/2 to 3 ounce lure rating, and it allows me to make those shorter skip style casts much better than the Conquest. Conquest is just a little bit too long for me to be incredibly accurate close range in shallow water. So that's my 1, 2, 3 punch on the rods. Same reel on all of them. As far as line goes, it's 20 pound all the time for me. So Sunline Sniper, Seagar, R18, you know, these are the two lines that I fish most of the time. It's just straightforward 20 pound, does everything I need it to do. You might get a little more action by downsizing into like a 16 or 14, but you know, when they eat these baits, they are gone. They are swallowed. And most of the time when you're fishing around shad eaters, their teeth are very, very sharp, right? So if you ever lip a bass and you're starting to get that bass thumb, right? They got a lot of teeth. That's because they're feeding on bait. When you lip a bass and their mouth is relatively smooth, that's because they're feeding on crawdads. And when they're sucking the crawdads in, all those rocks are kind of filing down their teeth. Well, when you're fishing shad eaters, their teeth are very sharp. And if you have too light line, then when you go to swing, the teeth can even break the line. So 20 pound is usually where I stay. For the 5-inch and the 4-inch, and of course the 3-inch, I will throw braid to leader, usually a 10 pound or an 8 pound, something like that, whatever is needed. All right, guys. That is a wrap for my favorite soft plastic swim bait, the Megabass Spark Shad. I hope this was informative. I hope you can take something that I talked about and add it to your, you know, fishing on your own. And I'd love to see some PBs come from you guys. So if you guys have any questions, please drop them below in the comments. As always, on behalf of myself and Jeff and Carmen and everybody else around here, we really appreciate you guys watching. If you could subscribe to our channel, it would make us all very happy. And until next time, peace. Oh, and click is this the bell sign, Jeff? What is this? Okay?
Links will be leave down below in the description of all the products featured in this video.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but then
No,
I got
you were
distracted
not.
by this. Yeah, so there will be links below. Yeah, see? I was just getting to it, Jeff. All right, guys. Peace out. I'm going fishing. Ciao.